Thanks, Kieran. Well, maybe we get a couple of interviews like that. Can I just welcome everyone here? Can I just start by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land and pay my respects to elders past and present. It is a thrill to be here, and can I just particularly acknowledge Joe Qatar, the CEO. Congratulations on your leadership of this chamber, the importance and the significant role you've played across the community over many years. Thank you for the opportunity to come along. I can also congratulate and thank the Consul General, His Excellency. Thank you for coming along, and great to have got to know you a little bit on this journey as well. I have my Minister here, John Ajaka. Great to have him, someone that's doing a great job across a range of portfolios. And there are parliamentary colleagues from both sides of politics here. Can I welcome and acknowledge all of them as well. Ultimately, I also should note my wife is here with me, and she recently, of course, but it was recently her birthday, and I promised her to take her out for lunch. So here we are. So just make sure you wish her a happy birthday as well. It will just help to make it that much more special. So thank you. In fact, family, family are particularly they're heartening, but they also sometimes come straight to the point. And my 16-year-old, Kieran mentioned the GST. After I kind of said that it's about time that we discuss this and putting forward an increase of the GST, my daughter, 16, said, "Dad, how was your day?" And I told her, well, I put forward a tax increase of the GST, and she said, "Well, that will make you friends, won't it?" So 16, with a smile, I might throw. And it is a great opportunity to talk to you, and I look forward to some questions at the end of this. But I think it's very clear, and I've had in my journey in politics a great opportunity to get to know the Lebanese community, the wonderful people, the incredible broad community, and the significant role you've played in this great city and state. Certainly we are built, Australia is built on multiculturalism, and the Lebanese community has played such a significant role in that. And I do note that 73% of all Lebanese in Australia have made New South Wales their home. So, there's 27% we have to work on. They haven't worked out that New South Wales is the best place, but it shows that it's a significant place. And great heroes from the community. We've Kieran Gilbert, as I'm sure you all know, but also the royal couple, I describe them as, Sir Nicholas Shahady and Dame Murray Bashir, and even Ben Elias. So as someone who's, a good bloke, but just a terrible football team he played for. No, the Tigers, I know there's Tigers fans here, so great to have them. But it is an important acknowledgement of the role of the Lebanese community here in New South Wales. And as I talk today, I think what's so exciting is where New South Wales is, and most importantly, where it's going. And there are some reflections that I want to make to you. I can't think of a more exciting time than we've seen here in New South Wales. And indeed, my strong prediction is this: I think in 10 years' time, we'll look back and realise that we were part of a very exciting era for this city and state. And I think all of us, whilst there are challenges to come as part of it, if you start to see the cranes coming in the sky, which I'll touch on in a minute, it's a realisation of how great this city is going to be. And I don't think any of us should underestimate the difference that it's going to make. Part of the journey we've had to do is to get the economy moving, and even today I've had the opportunity to speak to some that have said there is just optimism on the ground. There's a belief that business is growing. There's a strong sense that New South Wales is buzzing again. And that doesn't necessarily come by chance. I mean, there are macro factors at play, but there's also specific individual factors where we were determined as a cabinet and as a government to get the economy in New South Wales back where it was and leading the nation. Because when we came into government, it was no surprise to you. It might be when you reflect back. But back in 2011, we were pretty much last on every single economic indicator, and had been for a long time across the country. And as we've invested in the drivers of the economy, infrastructure, housing, cost competitiveness of doing business in this state, payroll tax reductions in the sense of new jobs, rebates for new jobs, workers' comp premiums, ensuring they were competitive with other states. If those started to take to fruition, there has been a slow turning around of the ship, and the economy has started to move primarily because of the businesses reflected in this room that have taken the opportunities, invested and grown. So the economy has come back. But ultimately, that's just part of the story. And I think where we sit in New South Wales, the big thing that we can look forward to over coming years is the difference we'll make in infrastructure. Now, part of that comes, and it's why I'm so proud to be part of a team that has made a very clear decision, because you have this in politics. You have a time when all of a sudden you are in power, and in the context of power, well, what do we do? Is this something, is this all about planning for the next election and staying in? Or is it about using the time in government to make a difference and to do the things that need to be done? And I've said on many occasions, it's actually not about power or seeking re-election. It's about having the incredible use and making use of the opportunity that you have been bestowed upon by the people of this state. And that opportunity is something that my cabinet decided about 15, 16 months ago. We are going to take to the people of this state what is right. And I think that's something that's critical. John Howard, on my way into politics, said something, actually through the current Prime Minister, and said this. He said, look, in politics, if you follow good policies and good principles, well, the politics should take care of themselves. And I generally think that's where the people of this state are. I mean, they want an honest discussion. You tell us what the challenges are. You tell us what the solutions are. Be open and honest about it and tell us exactly what you're going to do, and we'll let you get on with it. That doesn't necessarily mean that every single thing you do is popular. And for those that obviously looked in the polls and wires debate, well, it's not going to surprise you that if you did it on the basis of public opinion or polling, it's not something that you would have done. Indeed, my eldest daughter, 2 weeks before the election, said to me, Dad, I mean, showing how connected she is into politics, she said, Dad, what on earth is the poles and wires, and why are you selling them? And I said, well, it's all okay, you don't have to worry about it. And she went on to Facebook again and kept going. So, so she loves the politics. But although it does, that also reminds me that the Energy Minister at one of his street stalls, he had someone come up to him and say, I really like you, I like what the government's doing, but I can't understand why you are selling Coles and Myers. So, yeah, you get it, you've got it. That's a joke, it's funny. So the context of this, though, is the Poles and Wires lease, it's quite simple, and which is why we made the decision. I mean, all the evidence shows that you undertake and introduce private investment, it puts downward pressure on prices. So in the context of economic reform, benefit to business, benefit to consumer, there is evidence that puts downward pressure on prices. We could take that capital and put it towards the infrastructure that we desperately need. And you would have seen governments announce infrastructure projects. The problem was the funding never came with it. And it was the big reason. We can borrow to a certain level, but then that level we're pretty much close to, which means you'd lose your AAA rating. And that increases your cost of borrowings and the time goes on. So your operating balances are limited. So if you want to get on and actually build the infrastructure we desperately need, you need to make these sort of decisions, which is why we push the go button. And I think all of us, as we argued the case to the electorate, there was, yes, the scare campaigns came in all types of forms, but what we're determined to do was to focus on the difference it would make to people's lives. For those of us that travel on the M4 and the M5, well, to have them enhanced, to have congestion significantly reduced, what a difference that'll make. For those in our schools and hospitals in growth regions, it's one thing to have housing, but you need to have the schools and hospitals and the infrastructure to match. Well, we can get on and actually do those. The Sydney Metro, which is something we've all heard, stories, brochures, pictures, we've hoped for, well, on the basis of this, it actually gets built. So the global city in this country actually has the railway system and a metro that matches the great global cities in the world. The Second Harbour Crossing, which is part of that, what that does is it unlocks the CBD, which is where the number of trains an hour were limited. By taking that away, we increase the capacity of the rail network by 60%. So the difference that can make Across the rail network, you can see not only can we reduce congestion now, but in terms of future populations to come, we've got a capacity to get ahead of the curve and actually future-proof the city. It also makes a difference regionally. Water, some of the critical agricultural areas, we're going to invest $1 billion into water facilities that actually start to drought-proof critical parts of the economy. Some of our regional highways, improving productivity, improving safety. Sports and cultural facilities. So you have this incredible sense where a great city all of a sudden becomes even greater, and we compare ourselves to the best in the world. And my strong argument is, why have we waited for that? Why would you wait? Why would you let politics get in the way of something so tangible, so real, and so wonderful for this city and state? Which is why I was so proud to lead a team that was committed to do what we strongly believe is the right thing, and now the challenge is to implement. And over the next 4 years, there will be plenty of disruption. The city is not used to the sort of infrastructure we will be building, and we have said that that comes with inconvenience. But obviously we'll try and minimise that inconvenience and keep our eyes on the prize, which is how this city and state looks at the end of this progress. Now, the other thing, if you follow these principles through and stick to that, well, that does mean there's going to be additional challenges. And as I have outlined over the last couple of weeks, if you ask me what keeps me awake at night, what's the biggest challenge that we face, it is clearly health funding. Our health funding is growing at a much faster rate, and will over the next 15 years grow at a faster rate than revenues will match. That starts to create a significant structural deficit. Now, on conservative estimates, if you look at Commonwealth budgets and state budgets, you get to a $45 billion hole in terms of deficits across the country, predominantly driven by health. About 80% of that is health costs. So as a country, we have to have a discussion. You know, how are we going to fund the health costs, which is so critical to our daily lives? And as part of that, is there a chance for tax reform as well? Which is why we have put that forward. We have said we have to have the discussion, and I've been heartened, I have to say, by the South Australian Premier that agreed we have to have the discussion, obviously despite political pressure he might face. And collectively, the Premiers have come together to enable us to spend time to look at this, to determine the effective way that we can address this big national problem, which impacts every single of the states in exactly the same way. My sense to all of us on that is, the debate will continue, the discussion will continue over the next few months, but decisions will have to be made. And it's not easy, but ultimately for all of us, it is the right sort of discussion we need, because unless we do it, the sort of cuts that you need in health are just not sustainable. That $35 billion gap in health, if you look at cutting services to match, well, it's equivalent to about 30 Westmead hospitals across the country. Not something you can entertain. So ultimately we have to look at it. My sense is there's a capacity to do that, to put it towards funding, to improve the revenue mix in terms of states, so you've got less reliance on the inefficient state taxes, and you've got a capacity, depending on the modelling, to start to hone out some of those inefficient taxes as part of the compact. And it sets us up as a nation, a state and nation, and I think they're the sort of discussions we have to have. And lastly, I also note that we're not only in a position of rebuilding the state, we also need to ensure that we rebuild or continue to build our community and the social fabric. And there's no doubt that we are facing increased challenges in this space. And some of the revelations of the extremism and what we're seeing with our kids, I think all of us are just in shock that we could see some of these actions. And ultimately the solution is for us to work together. And we have to work together to ensure that we protect our kids. And I should acknowledge the role of Nick Cowdis, who's here with us, his leadership in this in particular. Because I have to say, the proudest day for me in this job, and the day I could not believe the state I was part of, was in those harrowing moments after the siege. Because there, I saw the community come together like never before. You know, actions that came to bring hate and division actually brought exactly the opposite. They brought peace, they brought unity. And all members of the community, all backgrounds, all faiths, all ages, came together and said, what we have here in New South Wales is special. We must keep it. And I couldn't believe the scenes. And those that had the privilege of being down there, I think you'll acknowledge that we are lucky to be part of a state which is so special. And I thank the police and Nick for his leadership on the cohesion, but it is a challenge that we will get through, as it's a challenge being faced around the world, but I'm very confident in this state we will. So, friends, I just want to conclude by saying how great it is to be here in a state that is unbelievably on the move. I think what we'll see in coming weeks, months and years, all of us will talk about as we go through, but most importantly, we'll start to see the benefits firsthand. And I spoke to an electrician from Campbelltown in the election campaign, Liam, and the first widening of the M5, he said the difference that makes to him on a daily basis was unbelievable. He got home to his 6-month-old and 2-year-old before they went to bed, so he got home about 30-40 minutes quicker on the basis of that traffic being reduced. And ultimately, that is what is driving the government. If we can make that sort of difference in the infrastructure and in the way we're building community, well, that is a government doing the job it should be. And I'm very proud at the moment to be leading a government that's doing everything we can to make a difference in New South Wales. So thank you for the role that you play. We couldn't be here without you and without the businesses that are represented in this group, because ultimately that's the economy grows. We've got the capacity to look after those who need to be looked after. We've got a capacity to invest it back into the services that we need. And ultimately, together, that's what we can achieve, making a great state even greater. So thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. Thank you.
Okay, we've got time for a quick Q&A, so get some questions together, everyone, and I'll start with one and get the ball rolling. Premier, you spoke about the fact that there is this funding gap. It's a fiscal cliff, I think, as you described it. Do you have any sense of optimism at all that you can take on the states that are flat out ruling out an increase in the consumption tax, and also optimism that your colleagues at the federal level will show the political will and courage to pursue this?
I mean, on both fronts. I mean, yes, because as a nation, it's inevitable. I mean, we can look at this challenge and pretend it's not there, but it is. And it's not just me talking about it. I mean, it's everyone. Look at the comments that Glenn Stevens made in terms of his view in terms of projections of the economy. And if the sense is that the numbers are actually conservative that we put forward, well, earlier action is required. And my sense of the Premier's is they are absolutely in furious agreement that this fiscal gap is not only real, it's the biggest challenge that we face. Even the ones that have opposed, well, they've certainly put forward alternative options in revenue. And I said I'm open to considering them. I mean, let's have that discussion on how we do it. Ultimately, though, we need to do it in the most efficient way, in a way that's fair, and in the way that doesn't stymie economic growth. And that is part of the challenge. But my sense, both federally and at state levels, that all of us are going to have to come to grips with this. And ultimately, it's whether it happens in the next few months or the months after that, it's inevitable it has to happen, because all of us rely on the services and we need to do it.
Okay, let's go to the floor now. Any questions? Okay, where is the microphone? If someone could take the microphone too. Thank you very much. Okay, the gentleman in the front table here. Thank you.
Chris.
Premier Chris Johnson from the Urban Task Force. You talked about the disruption in the city as we change and mature with a new transport system, but there's a bigger level disruption to the whole metropolitan area, and that's as we move from a suburban city to a more urban city. This is apartment living, about towers, railway stations, that whole thing. And my question is, the need to make that change occur can't just rely on 41 separate councils trying to do that, and I think it needs major state leadership to encourage that maturing and communicate that big change as we move from suburban to much more urban living, and the infrastructure and the buildings and the structure that goes with it.
Yeah. So do I take that as a comment, Chris? Or Yeah. No, and obviously we are undertaking the Fit for the Future process with local government, and we have been working closely with local government, and we've put forward a range of incentives to basically reduce the number of councils, and that's what we've been looking to do. Proposals have come in. We're also doing the Greater Sydney Commission, and at the same time we need to discuss with the local government sector on how to achieve it, because you're right. I mean, I think that a good example is the North West Rail Link, or the northwest part of the Sydney Metro, where local councils have actually said yes, we're happy with the density as the public transport comes, and I think it's a good understanding the city is changing, the acceptance of density is changing, provided that the infrastructure is there. So we need to do that, but the Greater Sydney Commission is particularly going to be charged as part of this to implement the Metropolitan Plan, to ensure that we think as a whole city rather than just the particular boundaries that we have in local government and stick up the barricades around it. We're just going to protect this little patch. We need to think as the whole city. And that change is something that needs to come as part of this. And obviously, we're very confident on the measures that we introduce will do that. All of us live in a big city, a global city, and there are things we need to do to make it successful and ensure that we sustain it.
Premier, thank you. We've got another question at the back. Thanks, sir.
Premier, if we're able to increase the GST to 15%, could we eliminate stamp duty and land tax?
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, no, look, I mean, the challenge is this. There are two parts. We have a fiscal gap, but at the same time we have inefficient taxes. And my sense on the proposal is that you can deal with both, and you certainly can start to deal with the removal of inefficient taxes as part of this. You can't get rid of it all, but you can do some substantial tax reform as part of this. And one of the challenges you have, about a third of the state revenue comes from state taxes, which is a relatively small amount, but as rightly has been articulated, stamp duty is the most inefficient tax, and every tax study will tell you that. It sort of restricts the mobility of capital, it's distortionary, and it obviously is not good economically. So starting to make a difference in stamp duty has been something I've argued for as part of this, and we do need to consider it. So we've got a big challenge in health, but any capacity we have as part of the compact to start to take away some of the inefficient tax is a good thing, because at the moment stamp duties are going well, the property market's going well, but it's volatile. Look at the historical position of it, it's quite volatile. You're better to rely in a budgeting sense on a much more stable revenue stream, which obviously the GST is. I mean, it does have volatility, but nothing like stamp duty. So it makes sense, it's just a question of degrees and how, and that's part of the debate that we're now having, and the great news is we're having that. But there's an opportunity to discuss it in a real way. Thanks, John.
Okay, opportunity for another question. Yep, thank you. In the middle.
Paul Garrard, Parramatta Council. Mr Premier, as the Minister for Western Sydney, you've been able to get light rail in the eastern suburbs. How can we get it, or when will there be an announcement about Western Sydney getting light rail?
I'm not going to announce it here. But yeah, it's true, and the council's played a great leadership role on this. And John, as the former mayor, was strong. The councillors have been strong, and the GM's been strong. And that preliminary work on light rail, in terms of connecting Parramatta and the connectivity more broadly across Western Sydney, has been very important. Infrastructure New South Wales have considered that, and obviously we have a range of options on where to start, at what route to start with, and how to do it, and that'll be coming shortly. But the good news is, on part of the decisions we made up front, that the lease of the poles and wires, well, we've got the capital to actually deliver it, and that's the difference. So Parramatta is a great case study in the difference you can make. I mean, we're moving the Powerhouse Museum there, which will give it a cultural precinct. We're obviously in the midst of significant improvements in terms of the M4, which is a critical part of the connectivity. We've got one of the most impressive high schools ever built in the country, sort of underway. So it is, and light rail to come, and there's the urban, some of the precincts which are being redeveloped. Parramatta is buzzing, and it is a reflection of what is going on in Western Sydney, what is going on in this city, and haven't we waited a long time for this? And I think all of us are very excited about what's happening at Parramatta.
Okay, we'll have one more from the floor. Thank you, up the back of the room. Thank you.
You mentioned earlier on about future-proofing the state, and you mentioned about the part of the M5 increasing to 4 lanes, and how well that affected the Blacktown area in Campbelltown. Now, how do we know that we're actually future-proofing the state with the new West Connects and the extension of the M4, considering a lot of those are only going to be around 3 lanes? And we know, and how long is that going to last? M5 has only lasted 15 years. How long are these roads expected to last? What's the forecast?
Yeah. But I mean, there's obviously a whole range of modelling needs to be done. The big difference that we are doing with this program is not only are we enhancing, expanding the motorways and the missing link. So we're basically completing the Sydney motorway network, which is the essential part, and enhancing the existing high-density corridors, which is obviously the M5 out to the southwest and the M4. Now, the difference is that we're actually dealing with the public transport at the same time. And that Second Harbour rail crossing, as I said, it gives 60% more capacity across our rail network. I mean, that is a revolution that I think in many respects was lost in the election campaign, because the difference that makes to this city, well, that gives us the capacity to deal with congestion. And obviously, the more incentive we can provide for people to use the rail network, well, that takes pressure off roads. So at the same time as you're increasing significant capacity on the motorway network, you're providing massive capacity back onto the rail network. And those two together give us the best chance. Now, the city will continue to grow. But, you know, this, as we build this infrastructure, well, that sets us up for a generation. And that's an incredible result. And obviously, it gives us great confidence into the future in terms of our ability to actually deal with the growth, rather than to see what we saw when the M5 first opened, which on day one it was full. I mean, that was the problem we faced. So this extra capacity we are creating across Sydney is unprecedented. And the connection from the West Connects into the Western Harbour Tunnel, which we start within the next 10 years, well, you'll have a pressure off the eastern distributor, you have pressure off the Harbour Bridge, you'll have a second way around the city that's clear and easy. And that'll make a huge difference across all of the other road networks as well. So it's coming together as a package, and I think that's part of the challenge. If you think of everything that's being done and as it's delivered, the city will be very different, our lives will be very different, and we're very confident as we do it. The difference it makes is not only for today, but it's also for tomorrow, and that's a big difference.
Okay, Premier, just one more question, if I can. You referred to the recent security issues, and you know, in that context, I guess we look at social cohesion. Where do you see our multicultural society's social compact right now, and what's the role of political leaders in ensuring our famous cohesion remains in place in this country?
Well, I think the important part is to cherish it. I think it's almost something that we've taken for granted. And as you look at events happening, I mean, events almost on a daily basis around the world, I mean, it's disturbing. I mean, there is a sense that there is a determination to take away cohesion, you know, not just here but around the world. So I think our job is to value what we have, and at the same time to do everything we can to come together. I mean, we are collectively, there are many multicultural backgrounds in this state, but we're one family. And I think there needs to be that deep understanding. We are one family. And that's what I saw, you know, in the days after the Martin Place siege. There's a deep acknowledgement of that, and how lucky we are. And it really, I mean, if we do that and we realise, wow, this is being challenged, you know, this sense of cohesion, this sense of freedom, this sense of wonderful multiculturalism, well, they will not take that away. And we are all going to work very hard. And the leadership across the community has been, I think, incredible. And I think that's why we are in the position we are, why it's such a vibrant part of who we are as a state. Thanks, Karen.
And can I invite Justin Wang from the PIA, please, to come and say a few words and to thank the Premier. Thank you.